That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I probably have gotten done with about 10 dynasty drafts so far this offseason. And I will tell you, there is one thing that has turned from an annoyance to something I have figured out how to take advantage of and to beat down our competition with. And that is going to be the horrible draft ADP that there is on Sleeper. I'm assuming that pretty much everybody at this point for their dynasty format is playing on Sleeper, playing on MFL, yada, yada, yada. Everywhere I check, the ADP is trash. I have a couple theories on why that is. We'll get into it a little bit later on. I will talk about how we can take advantage of this very bad ADP, cross off some landmines we need to be avoiding in our drafts, and queue up some hidden gems that are going to be down below. We're going to identify some of the running backs that fit that mold as well, players to avoid, players to go for in your drafts. But before we get into it, go down there, drop a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Leave a comment. Let me know why I'm an idiot. Trust me, I've been trying to figure that out for about 23 years now. And also, if you want to check out some of this ADP data we are going to be talking about, if you want to kind of take advantage of this cheat code and go hop in some of the real money best ball drafts today, you can do that with us in the live stream as well. Go sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code FLOCK. When you use promo code FLOCK, you will also get access to our Dynasty research book. You will also get access to our Dynasty rankings for a month. And on top of that, they will match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Please, please take advantage of that. You can find the link in the description. Use promo code FLOCK. And I think that should be it. And I don't know if we gave it away already. I know we kind of already teased it, but the number one thing I think we should be looking at when we are pulling up our player list to choose from in a sleeper draft is going to be not just the sleeper ADP, but a combination of Underdog's ADP, our rankings, and sleeper ADP. Now, the reason I'm saying not to use sleeper ADP is if you just look at a few of these examples, the fact that right now, Sleeper has Ezekiel Elliott being drafted ahead of Aaron Jones. Sleeper has Ezekiel Elliott being drafted rounds before James Conner, rounds before Leonard Fournette. This should tell you something's off. And I think I have an explanation for this. The reason is the majority of the drafts hosted on Sleeper are mock drafts. There's no $ attached to these drafts. People don't really have anything on the line. And at the same time, the leagues that they do have something on the line, there's already such a bad ADP data set to choose from at the beginning that you're going to be very hesitant. I am very hesitant to go down there, scroll 20 picks below and take someone that's nowhere close because I'll say, oh, I could always get them the next round. So what ends up happening is a nonstop loop where this bad ADP, players going ahead of guys they shouldn't be, it just continues, which eventually solidifies that. It cements this ADP for someone like Ezekiel Elliott to be going ahead of Aaron Jones. Whereas on Underdog, every single one of those drafts, real money, everybody's at least 18 as well, and they are updated constantly. So you get the adjustment with Tyreek Hill's ADP getting traded to Miami. You get the Devontae Adams adjustment. You get the Deshaun Watson adjustment almost right away. So how we are able to do this is we are able to cross-reference both ADP lists and identify those players that maybe should be going significantly higher in dynasty drafts and avoid the guys that Sleeper has way too high to begin with. Now, of course, I have to put out the massive disclaimer. If you were just drafting off Underdog ADP, you are going to lose your league. You are going to have the worst dynasty team in the league, 100%. If it was as easy as me telling you, hey, pull up Underdog's ADP, draft your dynasty team from that, you're going to crush. Of course, if it was that easy, nobody would play Dynasty. The game would be solved. You have to have some nuance in there. You have to understand how to use this tool effectively to be able to be a better drafter overall. And how we are going to do this is we are going to be bucketing players because this ADP is only for 2022. It's not for Dynasty leagues. It's for real money. The sharpest drafters are there. I will tell you that. Real money with the smartest fantasy minds just for this upcoming season. So how we are going to be viewing this is you are going to be viewing your contending assets in one bucket. Let's look at this example first off. Aaron Jones, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, James Conner. I am about to reference their sleeper ADP versus their underdog ADP. We can identify players that in dynasty drafts maybe are severely undervalued, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe those players that are way overvalued. And we can also look at some rookies and realistic expectations for guys like Kenneth Walker, Isaiah Spiller. I mean, look at a couple guys being way overdrafted there. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then there's also just random examples that we may be able to find, guys like David Montgomery, Travis Etienne, that we can talk about at the end of the video. But first, let's start it off with the contending assets. And I will say, by far and away, this is going to be the best group of players to be looking at. Because if we look at those four names I previously mentioned, Aaron Jones, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, and James Conner. I understand, yes, Zeke, he's much younger than most people assume. I mean, 26 years old, turning 27 this season. But all these guys are pretty much in the exact same bucket. All these guys are going to be 27 this upcoming season. And that number doesn't matter as much as the fact that they really are all the same player. They're options that are to give you production in 2022, 2023, and really you're not expecting anything beyond that. It's completely fine to draft these running backs at a value if you think that production can outweigh the loss in trade value you're going to see over the next 2 seasons. So we can all agree these players are for 2022, 2023. I don't think we have to be saying, okay, well, yeah, Zeke's going to be more productive than Leonard Fournette this year, but Leonard Fournette's going to have more production 4 years from now. We're not playing that game with these players. Just looking at the production today, which makes this group of running backs the best example that we can look at. And let's look at their sleeper ADP. This is going to be the ADP data set where you're actually drafting your dynasty teams and we're having to make adjustments to because it's all messed up. So you have Ezekiel Elliott as the top running back here. Running back 1, ADP 23. And if we're going beyond that, you have Aaron Jones, running back 24. Then you have Leonard Fournette, running back 28. And lastly, you have James Conner as running back 33. You have James Conner going rounds behind Ezekiel Elliott in these dynasty startups, which, I mean, does not make sense in the slightest. And this can be, I don't want to say just only proven based on underdog ADP. Of course, this is just a starting point. You are going to have to go and do your own player evaluations. I mean, I have my own dynasty rankings that I can reference at the same time. Probably a good idea if I pull those up right now. But if we're looking at this underdog ADP list, instead of Ezekiel Elliott being the top guy off the board, you have Aaron Jones. And it's not remotely close either. You have Aaron Jones, running back 12. He's going about 9 spots ahead of Ezekiel Elliott in redraft ADP. Despite that, Zeke's going before him in dynasty drafts. When they're the same age, they have really the same long-term outlook. I mean, yes, you're worried about A.J. Dillon. You're also worried about Tony Pollard. I don't really see a massive gap there. So you have Aaron Jones running back 12 in redraft. Probably a little bit rich for me, but it is what it is. You have Leonard Fournette running back 17. So, I mean, I think that's completely reasonable to have him significantly ahead of Ezekiel Elliott in redraft. And based on the contract, I probably would have Leonard Fournette ahead of Zeke in Dynasty as well. But the most important thing I want to point out here is then you got Zeke running back 21, James Conner running back 22. So if you look at this, you see Ezekiel Elliott and James Conner being drafted back-to-back in redraft leagues. Those are the leagues where the smart people are drafting. Those best ball leagues where there's real money on the line. Everybody's at least 18. Those are the guys where they know what they're doing. I mean, people go and draft thousands of dollars of underdog teams. I mean, I'm probably going to have over 200 teams this offseason, particularly on the live streams. But here, so many people are so invested into this. For us to see that Zeke and James Conner are being drafted back-to-back on that format, whereas you're getting Conner rounds after Zeke in your startup, that is very telling. Like if you're pulling up this list in our dynasty rankings, I will admit I have all these players in the same tier, but I have it ranked as their underdog ADP. Not just because that's their ADP on Underdog. Of course, I mean, a little bit of that went into this because I have to look at what the best redraft players are thinking as well. But I have Aaron Jones running back 24 in my Dynasty rankings. I have Leonard Fournette running back 25. I have Ezekiel Elliott running back 26, James Conner running back 27. So if we were using this information and we were pulling up that sleeper ADP, what we would be able to do is just cross off Ezekiel Elliott. Zeke's going to be too expensive for you. And what you're going to also have to do is scroll a couple pages down, scroll some rounds down, queue up Leonard Fournette, queue up James Conner. You can get the same production, if not better than Ezekiel Elliott at a much cheaper price in your Dynasty format. If that's not cheating in your Dynasty league, I don't know what is. And of course, we can go to a different group of players, go to a different little bucket. Because while contending assets, those win now options that are providing us production for 2022, of course, those are going to be the best players you can go after. You could still use this for these rookies. There are a couple different examples that I want to be looking at. Now, if we're looking at Underdog ADP, of course, these players are going to be drafted later than they will on Sleeper, because on Sleeper, you're drafting these players for their entire career. Underdog, you're drafting them for their rookie seasons. So, of course, these guys are going to be values on Underdog. But I want to see where they're being drafted against each other, not necessarily against someone like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So if we pull this up, you have Breece Hall, running back 15 in redraft. Kenneth Walker, running back 29. So that's the first thing I want to point out. Everybody coming out here telling me, oh, Mason, yeah, I get it. Breece Hall's a great prospect, but I think that Kenneth Walker's in that same tier. I think Kenneth Walker, we can go out there and probably just take him the pick after Breece Hall and profit. Right now, Best Ball Drafters saying hell no. Breece Hall is that elite running back prospect. I would argue that running back 15 maybe is a little bit too low for Breece Hall, given the upside he'll have based on his prospect profile, particularly at the end of the year towards the playoff push. Then you have Isaiah Spiller as the 38th guy off the board. But what is very interesting is you see that you have this pretty big fall off to Isaiah Spiller as running back 38. So a high-end running back 4, a low-end running back 3. Rachaad White is being drafted as the running back 42. Rachaad White is being drafted almost in an identical range with Isaiah Spiller. Rachaad White's going ahead of Isaiah Spiller in some of these drafts, whereas Kenneth Walker is in a completely different tier above these players. And I will be the first person to admit I had Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall ranked back-to-back at the beginning of the offseason. We are looking at the receiving profiles and saying, well, they are both more than capable pass catchers. We are looking at the reported size based on their different programs. And we are saying, okay, they look like they're going to have pretty much identical BMIs. And we are looking at the projected athleticism. And people were saying that Isaiah Spiller was going to be faster than Breece Hall. So I'm out here saying, okay, well, yeah, we can't really judge these guys until we get to the NFL Combine. But when you have Isaiah Spiller not meeting our minimum threshold for his BMI, when you have Breece Hall coming out crushing it, when you have Breece Hall running a 4.39, and when you have Isaiah Spiller not even cracking a 4.60. I know we have a lot of people saying that 40-yard dash time doesn't matter. Have you ever built out a running back prospect model? Have you ever done the research into the position? Because I guarantee you, our running back prospect model is more accurate than yours. If we go back historically, look the past 10 years, bring up any prospect, I bet we would have a better chance on hitting on that guy. And we weigh in that 40-yard dash time. It is crucial to get to that 4.60. Here, you don't get that from Isaiah Spiller. So, Spiller falling like a rock, down my own rankings, down everybody's rankings, and it makes sense. Okay, so at this point, I mean, if you pull up my rookie rankings, I have Isaiah Spiller in the same tier as Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson, and George Pickens. I mean, I have him currently as the 10th player off the board in Superflex, and we have Kenneth Walker, 2 tiers ahead of him. I think there's a big gap between those players at this point. But what is very interesting is to see where Sleeper in the Dynasty community is still holding on hope to Kyron Williams. Where if you're looking at Kyron Williams, he did not hit our minimum threshold with his BMI. He did not hit our minimum threshold with his athletic profile. Right now on Underdog, I mean, there are a ton of running backs that I know people want us to talk about. I promise you, we are covering these guys in depth in our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide. I've been doing research on them every single day, and I really want to see where they end up going in the NFL Draft. But on Underdog, you have Damian Pierce, Pierre Strong, Tyler Aguirre, James Cook, Zamir White, and Brian Robinson, all going ahead of Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams is like, I want to pull this up real quick because I know y'all aren't going to believe me, but it's laughable. Kyron Williams is the running back 72 on Underdog. Whereas on Sleeper, he's the running back 5 as a rookie. He's only behind Hall, Walker, White. Please, please look at the real money leagues. Kyron Williams, I know a lot of film grinders wanted to get behind Kyron Williams. He's dead in Dynasty. If you want to take him at the back half of the 3rd round, sure. But where he's going right now in these sleeper drafts, he's another guy like Ezekiel Elliott. If you look at his bucket, he is being drastically overvalued compared to all these other running backs that are at a similar portion of their NFL career for their upcoming season production. So maybe this is someone you want to draft the last pick in your Underdog draft. But in your Dynasty draft, if we're looking at sleeper ADPs, another one of these guys, cross off your board. I have no interest in. Now, I know it's probably pretty easy to see how you can look at those contending assets, bucket them up, and compare the ADPs and figure out that you need to cross off Ezekiel Elliott in your Dynasty draft and do the same thing with the rookies. Figure out you need to cross off Kyron Williams. But there is going to be some nuance with this and looking at other portions with other players. Now, one example I wanted to bring up to discuss, and of course, I want y'all to go hop into some Underdog drafts, use promo code FLOCK, check this out for yourself. But one thing I will point out is if we're looking at like David Montgomery and Travis Etienne over there on Underdog, right now, you actually have only a 5-pick difference between these guys, 5 picks overall. So they're pretty much going in an identical range of the draft. Some drafts you're getting David Montgomery going first, other drafts you're getting Travis Etienne. However, if we're going over to Sleeper, they're drafted back-to-back. And what is interesting about this is if we ask ourselves where these running backs should be trending with their career values, with David Montgomery going into the part of his career where he's about to begin thinking about that second deal. And we know when running backs sign their second contracts, it is very, very difficult unless they pull a Derrick Henry, unless they pull an Austin Eckler. It is very difficult for them to continue to increase in dynasty value. The majority of the time, they are beginning to decline at that point. Whereas a running back like Travis Etienne, where he was drafted last year, going into year 2, really a positive season. If he goes out there and hits as a running back 2, we know that his dynasty value is going to skyrocket in reality. So if we're looking at 2 running backs that fit this mold, and we say, okay, over there on Underdog, in a redraft format, they're currently being priced in as their identical options. They should have about the same 2023 production. However, on Sleeper, their value is still identical. That probably shouldn't be the case. We should probably look at that example and go, okay, well, we need to bake in some potential upside that you could have for Travis Etienne to hit and then increase in dynasty value, where the probability of that happening with David Montgomery maybe it's not necessarily there for him to actually increase in dynasty value at this point. I believe, going into year 4, he would have to have an incredible season. So just using some small nuances like that, asking yourself the range of outcomes, where does this player's dynasty value go if he hits versus he fails? And then looking at the expectations for that player on Underdog with his 2023 production. Of course, this is just a starting point, and none of this is going to outweigh your personal evaluation of these players. But in a game where dynasty players are getting better every single season, I will tell you right now, the average dynasty player is so much better than they were just 4 years ago. Literally, I created this channel like 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago at this point, because I felt like I was the best dynasty player in every draft room I stepped in. And I was like, oh, well, we can come out here, we can talk some dynasty and teach some people some things. Now, I very rarely hop into a dynasty draft room and go, yeah, I'm the best guy in here. Very rarely does that happen. We need to be looking for these tools. We need to be looking for these indicators that we can possibly add to our arsenal to be able to effectively evaluate players and where their value should be. So please let me know if this video is able to help you out at all. Of course, please go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy if you have not done so already, to grab our Dynasty research book, to go out there and get our rankings and check out some of these drafts. But I think that should be it. Hope you have a great day and hope we get to see you with a video soon.